Hey guys, I just got through a epic book binge, as we all need to do now and again. Just finished Bruce Macdonald's three seminal works, The Light of Darkness, Stardust Ranch, and The Devil in Us. And wanted to just get this out quickly while things are still fresh in my mind and while I'm still sane, because ladies and gentlemen, these books are not for the faint of heart. I would not recommend them if you're just looking for light, entertaining reading in the field of ufology or spiritual discourse, because there is no fluff and they are packed full of truths that will frankly be tough for a lot of people to fully accept. So let's start off with Stardust Ranch. So, not sure if you're watching this, if you're familiar with the story of Stardust Ranch, but essentially it is a case of alien, UFO, entity, invasion almost in the family of John Edmonds, who has now passed away, sadly, at his ranch. So, John Edmonds purchased a ranch in the middle of nowhere with his wife, looking to get some solitude, as many of us need, only to find out that the entire ranch was basically a center of alien and dark entity activity for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So I won't give away too much of the story, but needless to say, it is the incredible true story. What to say about this book? It had me really questioning the nature of reality in a lot of ways. So John himself is an incredible and very inspiring person. So through the course of this turmoil and what he had experienced, being hassled nonstop by entities. And when I say hassled, I mean they were in his house. They were mutilating his animals. They killed his dog. They were assaulting him. They were assaulting his wife. It boggles the mind, really. And so if you're somebody who gets squeamish a little too quickly, I would be cautious reading the book. But if you want to learn about a true story of alien mishaps, I would highly, highly recommend it. Some things that really stood out to me was one experience John Edmonds had where one of the entities pretended to be his wife, and he actually went out to dinner with her, or it, until his wife called him and was still at home. It was very, very spooky to see. But from it, we gain a really deep understanding of what's really going on the alien world stage. And folks, not all of it's good. A lot of what we hear with people like Stephen Greer and others is that all entities are here and are friends, looking out for our best interests. That definitely was not the case with John. And so, as outlandish as a lot of the claims are in the book, they're corroborated by eyewitness testimony, other witnesses who were there. Dozens of people showed up throughout the course of decades when John and his wife Joyce lived on this ranch. And what else? Another thing I felt very interesting is that he got a lot of confirmation from a lot of people within government that a lot of these behaviors are very much an open secret. Within the area of Arizona and his area specifically, a lot of people were experiencing the same thing as John in terms of having animal mutilations, seeing UFOs and orbs. And then, of course, the Phoenix Lights, which ties in very nicely into the book. And so it's clear from this that there are definitely entities out there that take pleasure, it seems, in harming us, trolling us, scaring us. And through this experience, John gained a lot of spiritual knowledge and insight, namely his reactionary approach to it, right? He went basically militant on these guys, buying guns and weapons, and even cut one off with a samurai sword, one head off with a samurai sword, led to basically a perpetuation and an intensification of a lot of his experiences. And so at the end of the book, John really lays out the fact that a lot of these entities really do need our consent to do what they're doing. And our anger is louche energy, as coined by the Monroe Institute, that kind of keeps the entire process going. And yeah, it's a fantastic read. Just mind-blowing. It's a tragedy. John Edmonds passed away. Several believe that it was due to attacks by entities. And his wife, Joyce, she finishes off the book with a final chapter. Yeah, not for the faint of heart. I'm still processing, so I wanted to get this out now. And then let's move over to book number 2, The Light of Darkness, A Warrior's Tale for Our Time. This book as well, just absolute masterpiece. And again, I would not say this is for the faint of heart. It is very spiritually empowering, but at the same time, it's very dark at a level not everybody's able to handle. So Robert Wiegand, who the book is about, it's a biography of Robert Wiegand, is an incredible character. And Bob has chosen to be largely absent from the public sphere. He's done a few interviews, hoping to get him on sometime in the future if it's in the cards. But the man is just absolutely fascinating and inspiring, and he seems to be almost superhuman. Bob had a near-death experience at a young age, being nearly murdered when he was a child by a street punk, and that caused him to very much see the two worlds, kind of remove the veil between our world and the spiritual world. And that gave Bob a very interesting perspective on life at a young age. And going through a lot of trauma led Bob to search for a lot of answers in his life. In addition, it caused him to, I guess in part, join the U.S. military and to become a SEAL. And he wasn't just a SEAL, he became special operations, which is like the cream of the crop of the cream of the crop. And just passing the SEALs alone is a superhuman feat for those who don't know. But Bob managed to finish, I believe, at 38 years old, if I'm remembering correctly. Absolute beast. And what I found very interesting is he uncovers a lot of the secrets of the Navy SEALs. I wouldn't say things that would be, a breach of confidence or that, but he talks about Hell Week and the fact that it's actually common practice for soldiers during Hell Week, which is a period where they go 5 days without sleep, doing the most physically demanding activities you can imagine. A lot of soldiers end up going out of body, and that's just not really discussed, but I guess it's an open secret among SEALs, and that really ties into this concept of MK Ultra and trauma-based mind control, where there seems to be this effect that humans that go through intense trauma seem to be more open to psychic and spiritual, I guess, experiences, if you will. Obviously not recommending that, but it's very fascinating to learn more about the kind of inner workings and how it all works. And so the Light of Darkness really takes us through a lot of the underbelly of the world. It connects a lot of dots that, in truther communities we learn about, be it, the Council of 300 and extraterrestrials and the demonic and what else? Adrenochrome and black projects and all of this stuff, and really ties a bow around a lot of these things through a first-person story that's very, very fascinating. It was impossible to put all three of these books down, but Light of Darkness was really, really enjoyable for several reasons. Again, I would say parts of it are a very dark book. Bob lays out the case that interdimensional aliens are basically running the show. And he was exposed to these circles. So after leaving the SEALs, he worked as a private contractor, which was tied into a lot of intelligence agencies. And I guess a lot of people just told him straight up what the situation was. And he ended up seeing the Council of 300 and seeing that there were non-human entities at the helm here. So, things like this, they sound very outlandish. And of course, if we don't experience them themselves, how do we know for certain? But the just genuine and humble nature of Bob really does strike me throughout the book, in that he's not really trying to brag or be, embellish anything. If anything, you get the feeling he's very understating things. And from the few interviews I've seen of Bob, that seems to very much be the case, that he's a very humble man. But he's telling his story in this book, and it is intense, I would put it mildly. He also ended up joining an order of black magicians, kind of, I would say, synchronistically in this story. And he learned firsthand a lot of the ins and outs of how black magic works. And he's very matter of fact about it, that there are higher level entities, and when you do black rituals and sacrifices, you get power. And I think it demystifies a lot of what we hear rumblings about in the truther community, to just state that, hey, this is actually how it works. And what is so inspiring about the Light of Darkness that I found is that he really lays the case that we have to go through darkness to really connect with God fully. And it's something that I think, whether it be the Christian or the New Age communities, they may get this part wrong. And I really, really liked Bob's approach to this. So, for example, in a lot of New Age communities, there's this hyper focus on just, positivity all the time. All evil is in the mind and it doesn't really exist and it's pretty subjective, and then in the Christian side, they have some awareness of the demonic. Most Christians I know, it's not really something they think about normally. And there's a reluctance to really get into these types of topics, but Bob just comes right out and tells you how it is, take it or leave it. And I found it very inspiring. In fact, I'm still really processing that message, and that it does seem more and more in my research that a lot of these negative entities or archons really do need our consent to a large extent. And both in Light of Darkness and The Devil in Us, really makes the case that we are in a consent positive realm, a free will realm. And that is how a lot of these things work. And either by deception or, manipulation or ignorance, we fall into a lot of when we fall into patterns of control with entities like this, it is due to these reasons. And Bob also makes the case, which I find very interesting, that I'm still wrestling with, but he states essentially that there is no deviation from God, rather it be good or evil. They both work for God, ultimately. And it's something that is, I think, almost a spiritual initiation of sorts. And Bruce, in The Devil in Us memoirs, gets into it in a lot more depth. But yeah, Light of Darkness, really great if you want to just kind of have a holistic picture of what's going on in the world, connecting a lot of dots, I would say, in different conspiracies, as well as just very inspirational. Bob as an individual is truly inspirational and superhuman, as well as gaining a lot of spiritual knowledge, but I would say it's not for the faint of heart. And then we have The Devil in Us. This is fresh off the presses. I don't even think it's available on Amazon as of the time I'm filming this, but I believe it should be up any day. This is essentially an autobiography of Bruce Macdonald. And Bruce Macdonald we've had on the show here before. I've been obsessed with Bruce's content the last while. And so he was nice enough to give me these books, and folks, I just couldn't put them down. And so we're going to have Bruce on the show again soon to address a lot of the questions of these books. But The Devil in Us is a masterpiece in a lot of respects, I would say. He basically, just his writing style alone is fantastic. And just to be clear, Bruce wrote all three of these books. But yeah, just first hearing his origin story, which I was very partial to, because he's a fellow Canadian who now lives off-grid, who was one of the few during his life to really seek a spiritual path and seek a lot of answers, living in a world of craziness and dealing with, trauma cycles and multi-generational trauma. The Devil in Us, it's I would say it is a capstone to The Light of Darkness and Stardust Ranch, in that not only is it a fascinating story of one man's spiritual development and his spiritual path, which I think we can all have a lot of sympathy and empathy for, because it followed very closely to my spiritual path and the path of others that I know. But he very seamlessly blends in a lot of incredible knowledge about the world that we live in. He kind of builds on the framework built within Light of Darkness to really give us a sense of the nature of what we call evil, the nature of the devil, and it's our relation to us. And again, folks, this isn't for the faint of heart. He goes down a lot of pretty dark paths about, child exploitation globally, just the nature of unadulterated evil that we find ourselves in our modern world, as well as laying the groundwork, just like Light of Darkness, that it does appear that a lot of the controllers that we see that's, placed up onto us seem to very likely be possessed. And, that's something that it's very easy to just kind of say jokingly, but The Devil in Us, I believe, really makes the case for me that it's quite probable that this is what's happening. And so, again, Devil Enough gives us a very good paradigm or lens to explain a lot of what we see happening in the world today. Yeah, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. Coming out of it, again, it just had me questioning a lot of my preconceived notions of good and evil. Now, what I really appreciate about Bruce's work generally, and The Devil in Us specifically, is that he doesn't go super subjective on the topic of evil like a lot of spiritual New Agers do. He very much does call a spade, but he gives us maybe a more mature outlook or conceptualization of the nature of evil, what it is, how it works, how it gets into our lives, and how we can get out of it. and so again, this concept comes up that I think would be hard for a lot of Christians to accept, and I'm still wrapping my head around it, that a lot of the evil we see in the world is consent positive, one, but in addition is essential for our spiritual development. And so Bruce doesn't make excuses or platitudes for evil. He really does call out evil, but he really does lay that concept out very, very clearly, I believe, and concisely, that we do, in fact, I guess in our current spiritual development, we may require evil. And that's something I am still wrapping my consciousness around. It's something I don't think I've fully accepted, but I find it a very, very fascinating concept. And so, yeah, within this book, we're talking a lot about demons, demon possession, how it works. What I really appreciate about it as well is whenever we talk about this topic, it is usually from a Catholic perspective, where we see, imagine people levitating, or, the typical exorcisms that we've been programmed for. But Bruce really, I think, articulates well that demonic possession can be a lot more subtle. And in fact, I believe that demonic possession is intentionally more subtle for the reason of they don't want you to think that you are being possessed and siphoned off. It very much is an energy exchange, right? And an energy harvesting. And Bruce makes the case very clearly for that. But I kind of compared it to times where I would just notice out of the blue, say if something's going well, all of a sudden I'll just get really angry, or, set off on a dime, or, just the voice in the head Bruce basically outlines is maybe not yours. Maybe it is these entities who are feeding off of us. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. I do think there are entities that seem to feed off of us by our free will. And yeah, it's a very fascinating concept. Again, I don't think this is for the meek, or the weak, I should say, because these are very dark themes. I think Bruce in all of these books handles them very maturely. I think he can really guide us in terms of spiritual maturity, but it's not without pain just to read these books. It does feel like an initiation of sorts, and so I really thank Bruce for putting these out in such a way that it is accessible, but it's not easy. And so, yeah, I think The Devil in Us is a fantastic story. Both learning about Bruce himself, how he became who he is, but also tying in a lot of the themes of Light of Darkness and his own knowledge. There are so many little nuggets in there that you could unpack for a period of time. I love that about Bruce. He just kind of, even unrelated, just like drops a piece of knowledge in there. Yeah, one was that apparently heroin can lead to bisexuality. But I just didn't know that. But he drops like dozens and dozens of just spiritual nuggets that if you really dig into just those on its own, that'll keep you busy for a while. So just while it was fresh in my head, wanted to review these 3 books. In terms of order, well, this sequential order would be Stardust, Light of Darkness, The Devil in Us. I actually read it the exact opposite, and so I think it kind of prepared me reading The Devil in Us first to make Light of Darkness a lot easier, but nothing really prepared me for Stardust. I would say Stardust in some ways is the most intense, at least the first half, where he's going through a lot of experiences, because you really are put in the shoes of John Edmonds and his wife going through what I think is kind of hell ranch scenario for years on end. But yeah, I mean, all 3 I would highly recommend. But if you were to want to just choose one, I would basically say if you're really alien, UFO, UAP centered, Stardust Ranch would be my pick. If you want to really understand, I would say on a world level, how the world really works, how things are structured, how evil and off-world entities tie in, well, getting a bit of insider information from somebody who's worked in this and come out of it. Light of Darkness would be your pick. And The Devil in Us, I would say, if you're just really interested on understanding the nature of evil from a spiritual perspective, yeah, I would highly recommend it, as well as learning about the spiritual journeys of Bruce, which I found a lot of parallels to into my own life. So, okay, guys, well, hope you check them out. They're all on Amazon. I know Bruce. He's a great guy. You're going to have him on again. I'm sure he'd really appreciate the support. Okay.